Hello, hello. Welcome to today's episode. Yes. I was about to work on something that I have been putting off due to perfection, also due to fearing that I wasn't going to be chosen. And so I was subconsciously preventing people from making a decision to enhance their life, better themselves. And it's have you ever been invited to something you don't really know what it's about, but you go and then you're like, holy shit, that was the best thing I have experienced? And then there's people that just don't invite people. They sit behind a computer or behind a screen. We'll say whatever screen. It could be a movie screen. It could be what are those screens that you go behind when you're like dressing, undressing? In like photo shoots or something. There's people that hide behind the fear of really stepping out and really being seen and really creating an experience for them, not just themselves, but for everyone around them. Then I got to thinking, there's also been a situation that arose this week that I wasn't anticipating. But at the same time, it was a revelation to a prayer I had asked for. So I got what I asked for. It just didn't show up in the packaging that I thought it was supposed to look, right? So it happened unbeknownst to me out of the blue. And I have been embodying the fruit of all of the hard work I have been encompassing behind the scenes. I have been walking into this version of myself, but I'm experiencing it also in real time. There's a few things that you can do, and this is something that I say on my podcast all the time. I am not here for a show. This is not a motivational talk. I'm not here to motivate you. If you are listening to my podcast and you do nothing with what I say, that is a choice you've made, but then this podcast isn't for you. Knowledge will puff up. Knowledge actually overloads us and causes us to walk around aimlessly until we decide to pick a target. And I'm not saying targeting people, I'm saying pick a target, pick one thing to implement, walk in that and start doing it every single day because you will begin to become the person that you believe you are, number one, but you also will begin to become the person that you believe will get the results for that very thing that you're implementing. And you will stick with it because you know that you didn't come this far to quit. You know that when things happen, that they're not happening to you to keep you stuck in a pit and move you backwards. A lot of things that happen to us, for example, on Monday this week, today is Thursday, so on the 27th of July, I experienced an instance where I got to experience in real time how to implement the things that I am learning and also how to find the awareness immediately, spot the lessons, and be able to move through what I experienced a lot quicker without bypassing, without deflecting, without redirecting my feelings. No, I was able to go through this exercise, which I talked about on Monday's podcast, which is I think it was the people pleasing one. Go back and listen to that one. It's July 27, 2026. Listen to the whole thing. You can even put my episodes on 2x. I do when I re-listen to mine or other people's because I'm like, let's speed this up, right? Because our brains love to like process things quickly. And I don't know about you, but 1x speed is like really slow. And it's like, no, I need a little bit of speed. Let's fast forward. But you're not fast forwarding, it's just quick listening. So, I was talking about, people pleasing and then this thing happens and Now, before, I used to hide. I used to let it affect me, things that would pop up, and I would spend a really long time reaching a point of, okay, found the lesson, and now how can I move forward? But now I have found some simple tools. One of those tools I found was, first off, naming in my body where the emotion is. Okay? Naming the emotion, whether it's anger, sadness, shame, guilt, fear, whatever it is, right? So finding it in my body has been super helpful. But then I'm going above and beyond, and I'm having a field day stating why I'm angry. So I'm not angry because I was spoken to disrespectfully, like true story, spoken to in a disrespectful manner. But I was angry because for all the years of my life, I was forced to be in environments with people in leadership positions who were abusive in some way, shape, or fashion, manipulative, harassment. A lot of leaders were, they would ambush me with saying certain things and then doing the opposite. They would get me to agree with them that I was doing things that I really wasn't. And they wouldn't try to help me understand. They would sit there and say, "You are troubled." So they would point at me and tell me I'm something or that I'm doing something that I'm really not. And when I would go to speak up, they would get mad. They would get like narcissistic. And so I experienced something similar with a person who's in a leadership position. And my first thought was, when it happened, I didn't get to respond the way that I wanted to, with being very direct with questions to point back their behavior to them. So I didn't get to practice that, but here's what I did practice. I immediately sensed and felt in my body the exact thing that I recall, because the body remembers, it keeps score. So my body remembered a whole lot of things with the very words that were spoken to me that I didn't ask for. Nobody asked for rude people or lack of skill. There's communication is a skill. And I fully, wholeheartedly believe that when we embody increasing our skill, we won't be bothered by people who question or ask questions. We won't be bothered by people who don't agree with the statements that's coming out of our mouths. In fact, we will be very careful at what comes out of our mouths because we won't be, like I said, we won't be challenged and we won't be threatened. And it's as if I was a threat to adults and leaders my whole life growing up in foster care. So I experienced it this week, but here's what's happened. I have found the lessons more quickly. I have been able to move unapologetically without fear into this next level very quickly. Plus, I was able to name why I was angry, because for years I was never allowed to speak up. I was fought with, argued with. My time was disrespected. My energy was pummeled. My confidence was when people say things that throws you off guard, that catches you off guard, it does something to you. And it's not meant to keep you in a pit and stuck. So that exercise that I have been able to do where I name the emotion where it's at, and then I talk about why I'm angry, why I'm pissed, why I'm frustrated. And I primarily talk to myself. And thankfully, in cars these days, they have it to where you can talk on the phone. So thankfully, nobody thinks I'm a Looney Tune. However, I have been finding that that practice has been helping me move through things a lot quicker. I also found the lessons. I stopped fearing situations, circumstances, and people in leadership positions because I realized they're just a person. My conviction is this: anyone who wants to call themselves a leader better act like it and showcase it I know people are human, but my conviction is this: if you call yourself a leader, or even if you have a leadership title, whether it's in a job or it's a business, your job is to maintain growth, work on yourself outside, because it's going to be evident. The fruit is going to show up when you are in tough situations and communication. When a leader is unable to communicate effectively, do you want to know what it does? It causes a chaotic spiral, which turns into a confusion snowball. Also is frustrating because now you have two people, you know, under the expectation and thoughts that, well, maybe they'll be able to give me an answer. But what happens if you're speaking to people and they just lack that communication skill, and you're not able to have an in-depth conversation that reaches the end, the end point, but instead it keeps going? Because when you also have a leader that refuses to work on their skill, it's going to show up. And at that point, you're going to realize it was never a you problem. It's a them problem. But your job is to also, as a person who, isn't calling yourself a leader, your job is to also spot those red flags, spot those lessons immediately so that you can say, hey, I'm going to share with you what I did. In this situation, I found the lessons of, oh, you know what? I don't need to engage with anyone who, number one, misleads me in a phone call and then does the opposite of what they say. I don't need to engage with anyone who can't even answer a question in the first 3 minutes of a conversation. I also don't need to continue trying to understand or clarify things that they're saying that don't make complete sense to them. So if it's not going to make sense to them and they are not aware of the words coming out of their mouths, how is it that you're going to know what they're saying? You're not. You can't. You can guess. Good luck. But at some point, the the conversations, somewhere it's got to stop. Somewhere it's got to give. And this is where I believe that when we go to show up anywhere, the parts of us that lack the most skill are going to show up in any event where we feel threatened, or where we feel where we feel challenged. And that's an immediate lesson for you and for anyone in a leadership position to say, hey, hold up, what what's going on here? They need to stop and assess. What is this person really saying? This is where people got to ask questions to learn, not to respond, but to learn. Like, ask questions to understand where someone is coming from. So there's certain skills that we've got to step into. And so I want to talk about anger for a moment. Anger is a wonderful, healthy emotion. Now, I will say, it's what people choose to do in their anger that can cause a lot of problems, right? So, anger, once felt, is a great emotion. And there are tools, like I've been sharing with you, to move through anger so that it doesn't stay in the cells of your body. By the way, your body keeps score. There's a book out there. You can go get it if you want. But please don't be the person that only gets books just to read and do nothing with the information that you are reading. And so the body will remember. And in moments where you are caught off guard, sometimes you will respond in a way that you've been so familiar with, and you won't even realize it until one day you do, and you immediately recognize when, at that moment, what happened, when the energy left, when that feeling took over, and then you get to operate in a different manner. At the beginning of my podcast, I brought up putting out an offer for people, but fearing I wouldn't be chosen. And when we also step into environments where we are communicating with people, there's also a fear that can show up. Are they going to choose me? Are they going to listen? How is this going to go? And if we don't set the intention of what we truly want and how we really want things to go, it's just going to turn into one big, like, lengthy, there's not going to be any productivity. Have you ever been part of a conversation where there's no productivity, there's no end sight, there's no goal, there's no vision, there's no intention, and the you and the reason for the conversation wasn't to even listen to the other person, it was only to state what you wanted them to hear. Yeah, that doesn't work very well. But instead, knowing what you're going to say, not wasting time, having an answer, um, and not deflecting, not dismissing, and not disrespecting. By the way, that can happen when we don't have a goal or an intention for how we want things to go. What I'm sharing with you today is a powerful tool in real time that you get to use to implement in areas of your life where you have put your vision off on the shelf, where you have feared not being accepted, not being understood, not being chosen. And instead, you procrastinate to get what you really want accomplished out there and done. Maybe you're the person who's a visionary, and that's amazing. By the way, visionaries are people who need a team of people that can help them complete tasks. Okay, I am a visionary. I am someone who, like Steve Jobs, I could totally create the iPhone, okay, or create a totally cool membership or something along the lines that's fun for people. However, if I'm not careful, I will start creating a ton of things, but I sometimes won't follow through. And it's not because I lack the skill. It's also my wiring. It's also part of my human design. By the way, if you have researched your human design, you'll know that you're either what is it, a projector, generator, manifest, I forget whatever else is out there, right? So I'm a generator. I'm one who creates and goes and is quick. When I make a decision, I run with it. But here's where I get caught up. The perfectionism, trying to perfect the wording. I want to make sure people understand. That's a fear of not being chosen. I was unknowingly, subliminally, with my subconscious that was leading the way, that was putting up a wall before I even gave people a chance to say yes. I have been sitting on this offer. I have also been sitting in a career that drains every part of me. It pays my livelihood. I'm at a new place in my life. I'm transitioning into, the best version of myself. I am shifting my career, my everything, values, everything. Knowing my value, oh my gosh, has changed my life. And I look back at all the decisions that I have made, and guess what it looks like? Every environment that I have placed myself in, like a job, for a career, for context purposes, mimicked the very environments I grew up in foster care. The exact actions that I have experienced from people in a leadership position, including doctors, people I've worked with, mimicked and replicated. Is that the word? Reminded me. They were the image of people that I have dealt with that caused the most harm in my life. But I didn't know this. I didn't recognize it until within the last year. And I remember coming to this conclusion, not a conclusion, I remember having this aha and awareness. And I was like, oh my gosh, holy shit, I didn't know. I didn't know that I was unknowingly putting myself in environments that mimicked my foster care environments. Horrific, because I didn't know what I know now. I didn't know my worth. I didn't know my value. And I didn't know why every time I got into an environment, why I was like, this sucks. And at the 2-year mark, my resume showcases I've left jobs. And I couldn't figure out why. And it's because parts of me were like, we are escaping the danger. And, healing doesn't happen overnight. I'm 48 years old as you're listening to this. And I told you that because a lot of people expect overnight, cookie cutter, quick results, quick fixes. There is no quick fix in healing. It takes having a strong will. I've always been strong-willed. Always. I've been stubborn. I've been rebellious. Those were told to me as though I was bad in my first ever almost adoptive home. Thank God we weren't adopted. They were very abusive, religiously, physically, mentally, emotionally. But I was always told how bad I am based off of scriptures. And I was like, but they lied because those are the best parts of me. But also, I realized that the best parts of me also challenge people who haven't worked on themselves. I have been challenging people my whole life. But here's the thing. Like I said, when you know without a doubt who you are, when you know what your convictions are, what your beliefs are, when you step into an arena, even if it's unfamiliar, you will start to notice where you feel threatened. But that's for you to work on. And I realize that the conversations that I have with people, if the communication has gone awry, I take an inward look. Okay, was I not clear? I do an audit on myself a lot. But when I know I'm clear and I know the questions are cookie cutter, straightforward, like cutting through the fluff. And when I'm in a conversation and no one can answer but continues to feel threatened and then says things that's disrespectful, at that moment you have now created an environment that you can't be trusted. The other person can't be trusted. I don't want to show up for people who act disrespectful, period, the end, because I know my value. And you know what? Because I didn't know my value 100% and I didn't know my worth, I put myself in environments where, guess what? They don't see my value and I can't expect them to. But I spent my whole life, years, proving my value, proving my worth. And guess who ended up suffering the most? Me. But now, because I've been doing the work, because I have been implementing, and because I have been showing up, I realize that I don't need to prove my worth to be chosen. I know that there are people right now that are ready to get out their credit cards to get on the monthly membership for the Reclamation movement because people have been telling me. I know that I am worth a lot more than I am worth the Fort Knox with barbed wire, and I'm worth more than the Jewel of the Nile. Okay? I'm valuable. What I bring is valuable to the table. I also know that I don't have to prove my worth to be chosen. Those who do not want what I have, I can't speak to those folks. Why? Because it takes energy that I don't have. And for people who refuse to see the value, I have no desire to be in your space. So lately, because of the situation that happened just this week, I have felt immense anger. And in fact, when I did that anger releasing exercise before I went to work on Monday, 3 days ago, 4 days ago, we're on day 4 of this week, okay, Thursday. I mean, I released a lot of anger for other areas of my life that I was carrying because my body is like, we need to release some shit, sister. Like, could you please let go of the anger, but let's get so real, raw, and authentic that we stop abandoning ourselves just to get results for something. When we step into knowing our worth, when we know we're chosen, we will immediately recognize when people do not. We will immediately recognize when it's time to professionally end a conversation. We will realize when it's time to set boundaries. We will realize when we have been settling for less and compromising our soul for a paycheck. By the way, do you want to know where this shows up the most? In career, leadership, business, in jobs, churches too. You know, for the longest time, I could not, for the life of me, put into words what the heck I do, who I help, all that stuff, because I was afraid of making a mistake. I was afraid that I wouldn't be chosen. And so, what I do, you ready, is I look back at this whole, let's just take Monday's circumstance event that took place. Okay. I found the clarity that I needed exactly in the moment, after the moment. I found the clarity. I ditched the feelings. I ditched the emotion. I dealt with it, but I did not make that the central focus. A lot of times when we're dealing with something, we focus on the emotion and the feeling, but instead we allow ourselves to feel that. Don't deny it, don't dismiss it, don't deflect it. But in that is when we find the lessons. When we find the lessons, well, that is where the clarity lies. So I, in my own life, architected clarity because I am a high capacity builder and I have lost myself in the process. But I have found myself now in the process. So that's who I help. High capacity builders are people just like myself who are going after who just are who you are. But somewhere along the way, we've allowed circumstances, events we've allowed ourselves to get caught up in that. And we lose ourselves, but also the process. Many who's listening right now, you who's listening today, we even will burn out trying to find peace and solace. And then, because we become burned out, what happens is we become numb. And then we start tolerating things that we have no business tolerating. And why is that? Because we've forgotten who we are in the process. We've forgotten our freaking worth. We've forgotten our value. We've forgotten that we are worth being respected. And what I've been learning from another amazing mentor, we command presence. Now, I'm not taking his business mentorship anything. His name is Ronald Fawcett. You can go look him up, or Dom Fawcett. He's also the author of a book called Think, React, Lead When Success and Accomplishments Aren't Enough. It is a very powerful storyline. It's like a conversational book. Thank goodness it's not filled with strategy. And I'm already hooked within the first few pages. And I'm like, what else you got? I had a conversation with him on the phone. He was at an event that I was at and he got to speak and I got to ask him a question. And then he kindly opened up an opportunity for me to make an appointment with him. and he instilled some powerful nuggets in 20 minutes. What would you do if you had 20 minutes a day to be in an environment where you reclaim who you are again in the process, so that you stop negotiating your worth, so that you stop negotiating who you are, your values? Do you even remember what you like to do in the morning for your routine, not mine? In the membership, I will tell you this. I'm going to give you a bunch of like things that you can implement, but this is where you, as the high capacity builder, high achiever, performer, you get to pick what's going to work for you and ditch the rest. But it's also a learning process because you're going to find yourself again. Well, Tiffany, what do you mean it starts with routine? It starts with routine because if I tell you right now what to do every single day so that you can have a better life, and if you don't like it, guess what you do? You abandon yourself because now you're trying to chase what I do and trying to fit it in the mold of who you are and what you like to do, and it's not going to work. Because what if you don't like coffee? What if you don't like sitting in the sunshine, but you do like going for walks? What if you don't like listening to the birds, but you enjoy going deer hunting? Whatever it is. I love the sound of birds. There is a peaceful, soul-filled, energizing thing. I also love sitting in the sun. I do have to wear sunscreen, even though I'm biracial. I got sunburned at my son's graduation, my youngest's, back in June. Yeah, so I gotta wear sunscreen, okay? But you find out who you are and your worth. And guess what? It is better to remain curious, especially when you get into the presence of other people, especially in conversations. Remain curious because at that moment, you won't even lose yourself in conversations. Imagine, I can only imagine if the person who claims to be a leader that had the conversation with me that totally turned the conversation into a shit show. I think about, imagine Tiffany if she knew how to communicate better. Imagine if the skill was there. Imagine if she remained curious, and just imagine if she knew that you weren't challenging her, but that she's got to check herself. And she cannot shift the blame with passive aggressive words, and she cannot shift responsibility that isn't yours to carry. And if asking two straightforward questions results in a event that takes place that you realize, oh, okay, there's more to this than meets the eye, that's where a lot of reflections got to come in, the lessons. And I've shared a lot today. And as I've tied everything together, the moment you stop negotiating who you are, you're going to start recognizing what I've shared with you today. Now, what I am going to recommend is follow, like the shows, subscribe, send this to somebody, your biz bestie, your work bestie. Send this to a family member. I'm asking you to please share this with people. And today, after you listen, when you go back to listen to it again, because you're going to want to listen to it again, write down something that you can implement immediately. And then I'm going to take it a step further. I invite you, I'm going to provide my email. I'm going to invite you to do a couple of things. One is send me an email. I'm going to provide my email address so you can send me a testimonial of anything you want to give a testimonial about this podcast, how it has helped you. What have you accomplished? What things have you done? I would love to celebrate with you. And also, that testimonial I will be sharing, so make sure you include your name. In the subject line, make sure that you write testimonial for podcast. Okay. So I know exactly what it's about. And yes, you get to write this down. I'm not going to type it out in the description. Okay. Plus, if you want, my email's going to be in the description. You can go there and look at it, but it's, yes, so it's going to be there for you. The other thing I'm going to put in is I have a link for you for, it's called Evolved Mastery, and it is a membership, but it is also where you get to take the very things I shared with you today and you get to apply them to your own life and watch yourself evolve a lot quicker than you have ever seen in your life. I'm telling you, within the last 5, 6 days, I have been experiencing more breakthrough than ever before in just a short amount of time since last Friday. So I think what's 5, 6 days? Day 6, I've already experienced breakthrough so quickly. I'm remembering who I am. I'm showing up without a second thought. I'm not apologizing. I'm realizing some things, but I'm embodying what I'm learning. I mean, just imagine if even in just one day, you start finding yourself going through breakthrough, because in our life, we can't stay stuck. We can't stay the same if we want different results. And you're the only one who can change that. So I'm going to put those 2 things in there for you today, and my email and the code for the Evolved Mastery. And yeah, what decisions are you going to make for yourself today? Did you know that by listening to the whole show, you just made a decision for yourself to move forward? So thank you for choosing you. And that concludes today's podcast.